The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Eric Coleman with IIST and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar, Leading an Effective Test Organization with a High Performance Test Team by Tom Staub. We're excited you're able to join us today. Set aside an hour to attend this webinar. This webinar is one of a series of free webinars to introduce the topics as well as the presenters of the upcoming PSQT conference in San Diego, California, August 14th through the 19th at the Sheraton San Diego Hotel and Marina. PSQT is the only conference that focuses on practical best practices in every aspect of software quality assurance and testing. The ongoing theme of the conference, Practical, Proven, Feasible, keeps a focus on what works. To learn more about this exciting conference, visit psqtconference.com. You may submit your questions at any time by using your question box in your GoToWebinar window. Today's presenter will answer as many questions within the time allowed at the end of today's session. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available for viewing in 48 hours at psqtconference.com. At the end of today's webinar, you'll be asked to complete a short survey. At IIST, we strive to provide the highest quality educational resources for the public and would appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to complete this short survey. I will now turn the webinar over to today's presenter, Tom Staub. Tom?
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. There are, in the title of this webinar, there are three words that I think are extremely important. We're going to focus on each one of them a little bit along this. I'd like for you to join me for the full one-day tutorial at the conference, which is going to be presented on Friday. So I'm just covering a little bit of the material that's going to be covered in that tutorial. So I invite you to join me. I'd like to see you there. First of all, the word team. Team is, we're going to define that in a little bit. High performance, what does that mean? And lead. And a lot of people tend to think of leading as a synonym to managing, and they're totally different things. So let's get started. A team, according to Webster, if I wanted to find a word, I'm still old school. I go to the old dictionary. And Webster's New World Dictionary defines it as a group of people working together in a coordinated effort. Well, that's what all of our test teams do, is they work together in a coordinated effort. And it doesn't matter whether you inherit a team or if you're forming a new team, these principles apply to both situations. So let's look at the types of teams that are out there. First of all, we got a permanent team. Your test team probably is a permanent team, and the players can change in that team, but the team stays constant. Then we've got a temporary team, and these are pulled together usually to solve a problem or to take on a special project. So they start and they stop at a certain point in time. Then you've got the virtual team. The virtual team can either be temporary or permanent, and this is becoming more and more common out in the workplace when we have so many satellite offices and groups that we have to work together as a team, but we're in different geographic locations, either within the building, but usually it's not even in the same city. Then the types of teams that are out there are sports teams, work teams, formal and informal teams, committees, problem-solving teams, and the last two are temporary teams. The formal and informal teams, think of yourself at your work. You've got a formal team. It's been defined. These are your players. But within that team, you've got informal teams that form because of mutual interest, and these are very powerful teams, and you need to know how to deal with them. Self-directed and self-managed teams. At one point in time, this was a very popular concept, is to have self-directed, self-managed teams. It doesn't work that well. So you really need to have some structure in the team. And when you get into leadership and leading a team, then you give them some of this ability to help formulate how the team's going to work. And then, of course, virtual teams. These are a problem, and a lot of companies have gone to virtual teams, and I've had to come in and help them figure out how to manage those virtual teams. It seemed like a good idea when they formed them, but they caused problems. So the team composition. People tend to think, oh, I need to have people that are all alike. Well, no, you don't. You need to have people who consistently prove themselves, proven winners, and you need people who do not have the opportunity, have not had the opportunity to prove themselves. Well, why do we want these people in there? If they haven't proved themselves, why do we want them in there? Well, guess what? They probably are the ones that are hungry to prove what they can do. So they're going to be good workers for you, and you want them on the team. The people that have consistently proved themselves sometimes can be so full of themselves that they're a detriment to the team. Then you need what I call the grinders. These are the people that just get in there and work and put their head down and grind it out. And then you need the creators. These are people that think outside the box. They can be hard to manage and to lead because they are creative. But if you can harness that capability, you're going to really have some dynamics going in your team. You really want them in there. So figuring out the best person is always a challenge. And a lot of companies now, when it gets down to the final selection, they actually bring the candidate in to meet the team. And the team, it will almost interview that person and say, yeah, we can work with them, or no, we can't. Well, that's great. But a lot of people, if you've got a creative type person and your team is basically made up of grinders or people that have proved themselves, that creative person doesn't stand a chance of getting hired in there because there's a bias. They got to be like me, and no, they don't have to be like you. So the person that needs the opportunity to prove themselves, or the creative type person, may not get the job. Now, let's look at team development and team building. Team building is putting together this team, making it work, bringing all the components, all the players together. Team development is how you develop the individuals and how that team is going to work. So they're two different things, but again, we tend to we use these terms synonymously a lot of times without realizing they're two different things. So team building, you need clear expectations for the team. You need to have context. Why is this team even around? You need commitment from the team members that they want to do a good job and they want to do the job that they've been given. Competence, they need to be competent. And somebody may actually be overqualified for the job they're in, but that's okay, because as a leader, you can channel that. They can help you run this team and make it work. So you need competence in there in whatever way you think you need it. And charter, you need to establish a charter for the team that clearly sets out the boundaries and expectations for that team. Control. How are you going to control the team? And that sounds crazy, but it's not. You got to figure out. Remember, you've got hopefully a diverse team here, and each one of those people are individuals. So how are you going to control each individual? Because you can't. It's not a one template fits all. You've got to control each individual. Collaboration. They have got to feel collaboration in this group, or it's not going to work. They've got to feel a part of it. They've got to feel that they're a member of it. Communications. How are you going to communicate between the team members? Well, the best way is face-to-face. But in this culture and today's society, that's not going to happen. We're going to get together periodically and have face-to-face communications. That's the best, because then you can watch somebody and actually see what they're thinking. But realistically, you're going to be doing it by email. You're going to be doing it by text. And so this is the way we do business now, and you've got to be ready for that. So if they're doing emails and communications, as the team leader, are you going to be a member of that communications? You may or may not be. That's for you to decide and for you to tell them what you want. Creative innovation. A high-performance team has creative innovation. They're not just content to do things the old tried and true way. And that's good, because it's amazing what you're going to accomplish if you have that innovation in there. They have to know the consequences of any actions that are not socially acceptable by the team or for the team. So you've got to clearly define what those consequences are going to be before, and so everybody knows when you get started. Coordination. How are you going to coordinate everything between all the team members? You got to figure that out. Culture change. Okay, when you think of culture, how many of you think of just between nations? United States, Canada, United States, Great Britain, United States, France. Those are cultural changes, or cultural differences. But think about within the United States, there are cultural differences and cultural changes between regions in the country. It depends on what's going on and where you were raised and where you come about. So I'm originally from Texas. You probably figured that out from my accent. So my background and cultural upbringing is different than some of yours, especially if you were raised and brought up in the Northeast, the West Coast, all different. So team development, you got to decide on the skills you need. Find the best person to fill that need. You notice that, first of all, we get the need. Then we go out and find the person. But you have to define that need first. I've seen people in the hiring positions that think they know what they need, but then when you start questioning them, they don't. They have a vague idea, but as an effective leader of a high-performance team, you have got to be able to define those needs in detail. Bring the team together. Decide on each team member's role. Remember, you said you defined the need. You went out and found the best person to fill that need. So you need to know what each team member's role is going to be and be able to clearly define that role to the team member, to each team member. H. Ross Perot, when he was putting together EDS, he came up with a slogan, which I fully subscribe to. I've seen it. It works. It is a mantra with me when I'm leading a team. Eagles don't flock. You have to gather them one at a time. What does that mean? It means that you cannot go to any one location and find all of the team members you need with all the skills you need. You need to go out and find them one at a time. That takes time, but you need to do it to have a good team. So let's look at the stages of team development. Most places, most authorities, books will tell you there's 4 stages of team development. Well, I believe there's 5. I've watched it, and in my experience, there's 5. So forming is when you start bringing the people together, and the team members, they're very happy. Oh, they've been expected to be on this team. They have high expectations. They're ready to go. So this is a euphoric time for everybody in the forming. You don't really know what you're going to be doing yet for sure, but you're just happy to be there. Once you start working, you're going to find that they're going to go through a storm phase. Why? They're human beings, and they may not get along with everybody on that team at the start, or they may not agree with the direction you have set for the team to take, and so you're going to go through a storming phase. And once you get through that, and it's going to be your job as the leader to get the group through it, you've got to recognize that it's happening, because your goal is to bring them into the norming phase. The norming phase is where everyone starts to work together. They all are on the same page. They all have the same goals, and they realize they're a part of the team. And then you've got performing. So when you go through all of this and you get them normed, then they're going to start really performing, and they're going to go on pretty well along until you lose somebody off that team. Then there's going to be a mourning phase. They're going to go through the same phases of mourning that you would if you lost a life, somebody around you died. So they're going to go through a mourning phase. And guess what? The minute you bring on somebody new to fill that vacant spot, you're going to go back through the previous 4 phases, because that new person is going to change the group dynamics of the team. So the team has got to start figuring out, okay, how do we now work together again and bring this new person on? Let's say that you, as the team leader, are the new person on that team. Well, you're definitely going to go through all 4 stages of team development, because you are the new person and you have been designated as the team leader. So you're going to be going through this. In my tutorial, we go into this in a lot more detail. High-performance teams don't just complete projects. They complete them efficiently. Rather than work hard, they work smart. And they improve the efficiency and overall value of the company. Once you get to a high-performance level of this team, your job is a lot easier, because they work together. They work efficiently. They can almost read each other's minds and know what somebody else is going to do before they do it. So by doing that, they improve the efficiency and overall value of the company and the overall value of testing. High-performance team has defined what success looks like. They know what it looks like, what success looks like. They can visualize it in their mind. They may not have it written down on paper. And don't be surprised if each person's vision of success is different than everybody else's, because we're human beings and we all think in different what success really is and what a success is to them. You have got to define as the leader what success as the team looks like, and then let the individuals, you define their role already, let the individual decide for themselves what success, their own personal success, is in performing that role. Actions are guided by specific values. You, as the leader, have to provide those specific values to the team. It's made up of the right people. You're going to work hard to make sure that you've got the right people in the right role. Guess what? You're going to make mistakes every now and then. You're not totally infallible. None of us are. But you strive to the best of your ability to find the right person for that job. And if you've made a mistake, then figure out how to rectify it. Would that person be better in another role? Easy. Change them. Change the role. You may actually have to get rid of that person, but that's something you have to do down the road. People in the right places. You may have the right people, but they may not be in the right place. And the only way you're going to find that out is once that team starts working together. Then you're going to figure out, whoops, Mary Jane over here should be doing this role, and Kevin ought to be doing Mary Jane's role. They're just better suited for all of that, for that whole thing. Easy. Swap places. Identify barriers to success. When you get started, the more barriers you can identify ahead of time, you're going to have that, not only that barrier identified, but you're going to have in your mind, how are we going to work around that barrier? How are we going to overcome it? So the best thing you can do is to identify the barriers, all the barriers you can visualize beforehand. You're not going to get them all, but let's try and get them as many as we can. Plan to eliminate and minimize barriers. I told you, you identify them, and then you look and say, okay, how can we overcome that? And conduct periodic progress evaluations. There's nothing worse than going along thinking everything is running very smoothly, and all of a sudden some major catastrophe pops up and bites you. You're better off not necessarily having evaluations, personal evaluations for the people. You're going to have to do that anyway. But you need to sit down, take time, and look at, with an unbiased eye, of how are things really going. That's why they call me in to do assessments, is they've figured out, whoops, something isn't right here, but I don't know what it is. So they call me in for an unbiased evaluation. Well, you need to do as much of that as yourself as you can periodically. So what are the characteristics of a high-performance team? Participative leadership. This sounds crazy, but it's not. The people need to feel that like they're participating in the leadership of that team. They ought to be able to feel that they can bring up any crazy idea, whatever, and yet you will consider it and not dismiss it out of hand. The team needs to be aligned on purpose. What is the purpose of this team? They need to be focused on the task. Everybody needs to have that same focus. They need to know what the task really is. They need to share responsibility. There's nothing worse on a team than a person that won't take personal responsibility for their actions. The person that is constantly pointing a finger at somebody else is somebody that's going to be a detriment on your team. They not need to be innovating. They need to be problem solvers. So those two arrows maybe need to be put together, because a lot of times, most of the time, you need to be very innovative in solving a problem. Oh, wait a minute, how are we going to solve this thing? How are we going to get it done? And only by being innovative are you going to really do it. They need to communicate among each other, between each other. There needs to be constant communications. If you've ever watched a kitchen that is really efficient and effective, a high-end restaurant, there is constantly communications between the chefs. And you need to have the same type of communications in your work team. And they need to be responsive. They need to almost recognize a problem before it happens and be responsive to, how do I solve this thing? A lot of times they'll bring the problem to you. So you need to be responsive too. And that doesn't mean that you need to give them an answer off the top of your head. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you actually have to sit there and think about it. So you just need to be responsive, everybody on the team. Now, what are the keys to success on a high-performance team? Well, first of all, you got to have top management commitment. And I'll let you define what top management is, but top management in your organization has to be committed to the success of that team. You need good leadership, strong leadership. And no high-performance team can succeed without strong leadership. And there needs to be accountability. Accountability by each team member and you as a leader. If you mess up, you have got to be willing to step up and say, hey, I messed up. Now, this is what I'm going to do to fix it. So that's accountability. What the team needs, let's quickly go through this. They need common goals. They need leadership. They need member interaction and involvement. Maintain individual self-esteem. Now, wait a minute. Why do we care about the self-esteem of our team members? Well, you do. Just think of yourself, and you want to have high esteem for yourself. There's nothing worse than feeling that the team leader keep telling you you're screwing up, you're no good. That doesn't work. That's not an effective leader. The leader has to build up the team members so they have self-esteem. You need open communications, group power. Oh, this sounds dangerous, but you need group power. Attention to the process. A lot of people, I've gone into companies and I start putting the processes in place, and they go, we don't need any stinking processes. Oh, yes, you do. W. Edwards Deming said, if you can't define what you're doing in a process, you don't know what you're doing. And I firmly believe that. So they need to have attention to the process. That doesn't mean you can put a process in place today and it will be, you don't need to change it for 5 years. Times change. That process is going to change over time. But you need to have attention to that process, and you're going to know that it needs to be changed. Mutual trust. You need to respect the differences between individuals, and the individuals need to have that respect and that mutual trust between themselves so that they're going to resolve a lot of conflicts before they even get to your level. But when they do, you need constructive conflict resolution in place and ready to work on. Now, how many of you have ever heard of Grace Hopper? She is the one that is credited with coining the phrase bug. She also was one of the team members that developed the programming language COBOL. And I had the pleasure of knowing Admiral Hopper. She was truly a lady that was ahead of her time. She was one of the smartest ladies I've ever known. And she retired from the Navy 3 times, and finally the 3rd time they made it stick. They kept having to bring her back. She said, you don't manage people, you manage things, you lead people. And when you think about it, she's right. You don't manage people. We think we do, but we don't. We manage things. We lead people. And she also said we went overboard on management and forgot about leadership. Well, if you want the best example of leadership, look to our military, because they use leadership all the time. They believe in it. So you need to look at that. Leadership is a process of social influence in which one person can enlist the aid and support of others in the accomplishment of a common task. That came from Wikipedia. Remember, I told you that the military is one of the best examples of leadership. What happens if the squad leader goes down, is killed, wounded, whatever, they're out of action? Well, does that team, that squad, cease to function? No. Somebody else steps up and assumes the leadership responsibility. Well, that's what you want in your team. We tend to think that management and leadership are two separate things. But in reality, they're two separate things, but they overlap. You will have a preferred style, but you can't do one without the other. So let's look a little bit at what they are. When I was going through school, I was told that management was planning, organizing, directing, and control, PODC. I thought, okay, that's it. Planning, organizing, directing, control. I know how to do it. I can handle that. Well, guess what? There's more to managing than just those four. You've got staffing. Oh, you've got coordinating. Yeah, I've got to coordinate amongst my own people, amongst the other groups, teams in the organization. I have to prepare a budget. Okay. I have to strategize. I have to make decisions. I have to solve problems. What about logistics and supply management? Well, yeah, I've got to make sure that my team has got all the supplies they need and plan the logistics to make it work. I have to manage time, not only mine but theirs. And how do I best use my resources? Well, so those four things that I was taught when I was in school are there, but guess what? There's a lot more to managing than just those four things. So managers have subordinates. They wield authority and power. They are focused on the work. Got to get this work out. And you do what I say you do. And you report to me. They seek comfort. They seek uniformity. Most managers hate having to think of people as individuals. They would love to be able to stamp people out of a cookie cutter. They like uniformity. They see problems. Oh, I got a problem here. They formulate policies. Well, I'll just formulate a policy to handle that. That'll take care of it. They take charge. Okay, we're going to do it this way. They perform duties. Yep. My job description says this is what I do. That is what I'm going to do. And they like formality. They like chain of command. They like for you to address them as Mr. or Mrs. or Miss. They like formality. They plan around. They don't plan to go through a problem. They plan around a problem. They're skeptical. You bring them something new, a new idea, and their first reaction is skepticism. Whoops, that probably won't work. No, we can't do that. They perpetrate hierarchies. They like hierarchies. They like to be the top person in that hierarchy in their little own individual world. And they have a transactional style. In my tutorial, we go into what is a transactional style. We go into each one of these in more detail. There are two types of leaders, formal leader and an informal leader. Okay, the best example I can give you of this is, let's look at a sports team. It doesn't matter what sports team it is, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, lacrosse, soccer, it doesn't matter. The formal leader is the coach. That's the formal leader of the team. But the informal leaders are the individuals that are out on that team, out on the court, that can actually lead the group, that can rally them and get them to working together. So you've got both a formal leader and an informal leader. And if I'm a football fan, and I hear it all the time in football, well, that person has stepped up to be a leader, or that person has the potential to be a leader. Well, that's an informal leader. You want them. So leadership styles are authoritarian. That doesn't work, let me tell you. An authoritarian leader is going to lose. Facilitating leader, this is what you want, is that facilitating leader that facilitates everybody working together to solve some. Democratic leader sounds great, but that's going to get you in trouble. Now, laissez-faire leader, that's just somebody that almost, oh, whatever you want to do, go ahead and do it. A democratic leader where everybody votes, that doesn't work. So you really want to be a facilitating leader, but you got to know the others to recognize if you're slipping into any of the other three styles. And if you are, bring yourself back to a facilitating leader. Leaders focus on people, on influencing people. They don't dictate, they influence. They have a vision. They know where they're going. They know how they want to get there. They're an inspiration to the team. They're persuasive. They're motivational. They can motivate their team to do what they need. They form relationships, and they value relationships. They value teamwork, listening, counseling. If something's going wrong, counsel them. They coach somebody. Hey, wait a minute, if you do this in this way, you can do better. Teaching. Mentoring. I'm working with a group of high school students as a mentor. This works out great. Leaders have followers. They apply influence. They're people-focused. They seek risks. They pursue unity. They want this team to be unified. They want the people to work together. So therefore, they focus on the people. They focus on individuals. They see opportunities. They set examples. They encourage delegation. You can delegate work, but you never delegate responsibility. You as a leader are always responsible. They pursue dreams. It's okay to be a leader and dream. They prefer informality. They're okay with you using their first name. They have comfort. They want comfort. They're optimistic. We can do this. We can get it done. They strive for equality. Remember I said they want everybody to have self-esteem. They stroke for that. They work for that. And they have a transformational style. Again, we talk about this in more detail in the tutorial. So, where are you? At the lowest level, people follow you because they have to. You're the designated leader. They have to follow you. So the next step up is when people start to follow you because they want to. And then the next step is people follow you because of what you have done for the organization. First of all, they start out by liking you and want to follow you. And then they say, wait a minute. They may not think this, vocalize it, but they go, wait a minute. That person is really making us look better and do better. So people follow you because of what you have done for them. Wait a minute. They've helped me out, helped me grow. And people follow you because who you are and what you represent. So, high-performance team is multifaceted. What I haven't covered here that I cover in detail in the tutorial is the multicultural team and the multi-generational teams. Both of these are real concerns for people in today's workplace because we have multicultural teams and multi-generational teams all over the place. The millennial has become the most populous generation in the workforce now. But they are also the most different than any of the other generations in the workforce. And they're driving companies mad. So team building versus team development. They're two separate things, and we talk about them in more detail in the tutorial. Leadership versus management. Again, two separate things. They overlap. You can't do one without the other. You're going to have a natural inclination for one over the other, but you have to be able to do both. You can't just be a manager. You have to be a leader also. And leading a high-performance test team takes courage. You don't just jump into it and say, oh, we're going to do this. It's a scary proposition. So, I want to remind you that the conference is coming up, and I hope to see you there on the 19th because we're going to go into a lot more detail, and I really like teaching and sitting there with you all as students and being able to answer your questions and your concerns and help you to become a better leader with a high-performance team. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Eric.
Thank you, Tom. While we're waiting here to get some questions, I wanted to ask you if you have any typical questions that you get when presenting this topic. While we're waiting for some people to submit some questions.
Well, the one thing that almost the first thing when I start the tutorial is, hey, are you going to talk about the multi-generational workforce? These millennials are driving me crazy. Are we going to talk about them? And we spend a lot of time on that. And so that is the most typical question. Then we get, the next one is the difference between leadership and management. People, it's almost got to the point where people think leadership is synonymous with management. They don't realize there's two separate things here. So we go into a lot of detail in leadership versus management and the multi-generational workforce. In other words, what we do is look at the soft skills involved in testing and how to make you, as the testing leader, a much more effective leader and your team perform at the highest level possible.
Okay, great. We do have a couple questions there for you, Tom.
Okay.
Do you see those in the question panel there?
No, I don't. Let's see. I got chat. I don't see the other, Eric. Can you just answer me? Just ask him?
Sure, yep. Well, one question is, could you please provide examples of consequences within the team building?
Okay, the consequences are you're going to have to decide that your company policy. Most of the time, the consequence is I'm going to call you into my office and we're going to sit down and talk about this. And I've had those kind of talks before in my life. But the best way to handle those is, this is what you did wrong. This is why you did it. This is why you did it wrong. Why you shouldn't have done it the way you did, and this is what you should have done. Make it a teaching moment. If that doesn't work, then you start in on the formal with giving letters of reprimand, counseling letters, whatever it takes. You want to start it. The consequences want to be as informal as possible to start out with, and make it a teaching moment. Next.
Okay, the next question is, how would you approach leading a test team when you are also very hands-on with testing yourself?
Very tough. The good question, great questions, because that's where you're going to have to, as the leader, you're going to have to back off. Remember I said the management and the leading are two separate things? Well, you can't be hands-on and be a good leader. You can't push everybody aside and say, well, this is how I do it, and do it. You can't do that. You've got, for their own personal growth and their personal self-esteem, you have got to mentor them, and you may be very hands-on, want to be hands-on. Turn that hands-on tendency into mentoring, to where you're teaching them how to do something.
Wonderful. Well, that's all the questions that we have today. So I'd like to thank you, Tom, for your time today, and I want to thank everyone for joining us for today's free webinar, sponsored by IIST, the leader in education-based certifications and training. For more information on how IIST can help you or your organization, please visit www.iist.org. You can follow IIST on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube to find out more information about IIST news, events, and promotions. Thank you all again for joining us today, and have a great day. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Eric. Goodbye, everybody.